So here is my cast iron pan. You can see it's got lots and lots of crud on it. Look at all of that. Underneath there, I think there's a logo. We're going to try to see if we can get that to come out. So here's what we're going to do. All right. I just got from a little errand picking some stuff up. So I saw these pans on local marketplace, Craigslist, and picked them up cheap. So let's take a look at them and see what we've got. Shall we? Oh, okay. Obviously quite rusty, but this is kind of cool to discover something that needs restoration. So right away, looks like a 3-notch lodge. I see the heat ring and I see the 3 notches. Number 5. I'm in the process of restoring one of these right now. What do you think? Okay. Let's take a look at this guy. Number 8. Ah, this is not a lodge. This is a BSR. See the pointy handle. Full heat ring. Is it a Red Mountain or a Century? It's hard to tell. Hard to tell. But I think it might be a Red Mountain. Or another way you can tell is looking at the edge. It does have a bit of a defined edge, but it's not super sticking out like others. Here's a Century BSR. See how that edge is sticking out, and of course they have the small wording in the Made in USA. It's hard to tell. Could be a transition pan. Won't know, but I say we stick this in the E-tank first and see what condition it's in, how pitted it is. Hard to tell right now. It's rusty. And this last pan, it's a big guy, almost like a fryer pan. It is somewhat smooth on the inside, although I thought it was a modern pan. What's it say there? Chinese, Asian. Okay, so nothing special, I think, although it's probably a really nice, useful pan. It's got a good bit of its seasoning on it too. So this one might just be able to be cleaned up. We'll have to see. So there's a little pickup. And this is the before. And stay tuned for the after. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit this with some oven cleaner. You want to use oven cleaner that's mostly sodium hydroxide, which is lye. That's what this stuff is. So we're going to hit it. And I'm going to pause the camera because I'm not going to do this with one hand. Okay, now we've got it pretty well covered. I'm going to put it in this garbage bag, leave it out of the sun. Alright, so there it is. We will check on it in a little bit. Here is my version 2.0 E-tank. I've acquired a 55-gallon food-safe drum. This one had soy sauce in it. I cleaned it all up. I cut the top off. When you cut the top off of these things, you want to cut the top, not on the sides, or you'll lose structural integrity by cutting this ring off. You want that ring there because it gives the thing a lot of structure. So I've got it working. I had it hooked up to a battery charger, and here's the problem with using battery chargers. Most of them are designed to not overcharge a battery, and they also won't continue trying to charge a dead battery. So they monitor whether or not there's any voltage in the circuit when you turn them on, especially these new modern ones. Anything that says automatic probably will not work well for an E-tank, because this thing shouldn't really be generating a whole lot of voltage that you can measure. So you need something manual that when you turn it on, it will be applying the voltage it needs. So the thing to do for most people is to get one of these bench power supplies And you see, I just picked this one up. I haven't read the manual yet, but I wanted to hook it up and check it out. I'm running 6.6 volts at 4.1 amps. I couldn't, adjusting the thing was counterintuitive to me. I wanted to set it at 12 volts, 4 amps, but I was unable to do it, so I think I have to read the manual. I think this has got some wonky thing where you set the voltage real low and then you short the connectors and then readjust the amperage. I don't know, I got to read it. But I've got it at 6 volts, 4 amps, and it's chugging along. And here's how you can tell that it's working. Hopefully I won't drop my phone into this. But you can look down there and you see the bubbling. See that fizzling? That's what you want to see. The fizzling on the pan. And you can see particulate around the anodes on the edge. You see how they're starting to kind of crud up. So this is a less than ideal thing. I'm just using 4 pieces of rebar. I've got them. I made these cables to tie everything together. This is a ground clip. This is 6 gauge wire, which is way overkill when you look at the little dinky wire coming off the power supply. But I wanted to just reduce the resistance across everything. So you can see it's cranking there. You see it just fizzling a little bit. That's what you want. Those bubbles are hydrogen. This thing will put off hydrogen and oxygen. And that means it's working. Okay, so I have taken the BSR pan and just put it in the sink with some water and just a little light scrubbing to just kind of get the surface rust off of it. To take a look at it. It looks like the inside is pretty smooth. I see a few little pitting spots. We'll have to see what happens in the E-tank. Take a look at the bottom of it. This is a number 7. It says 7B right there. And is that a hand-scribed 7? Hard to tell. What do you think? That sure looks like that's hand done. So this is a Red Mountain, pretty sure. The earlier BSRs, and if that's hand scribed, it's even earlier. So let's get this into the E-tank and see what comes out. Does it sit flat? It feels like it's a little oval. Let's put it right here just to see. Oh yeah, look at that. That's unfortunate. It does not sit flat, which is rare for these ones with the heat rings, because the heat rings usually, you know, compensate for that. That's a bummer. I wonder if you could sand down the middle a little bit, make it sit flat. But anyway, for what I paid for it, no big deal. I don't know if I even have a BSR number 7. That's a non-standard size, non-common one. So let's put it in the E-tank, shall we? Okay, so here's my E-tank. It's out on my back porch. And here's the pan. Now what I'm going to do is the anodes are some rebar that's connected with this battery-like cable. And there's our cathode right there. And I use this stainless steel cable. So I will run the cable through here like that. And put this through that like that. And loop it up like that. So I've got a nice good connection to the pan. I'll make sure that there's good metal to metal contact right there. And then I will just drop this thing down in here. And I come up through this hole. Like that. Oh! Oops. Alright, let's try that again. Had to fish it out of there. I thought my hands are all gunky. And then I will take the cathode and connect to it right here. And then we're ready to turn it on. I'm using a bench power supply, doing it about 6 to 7 volts at 3 amps. This thing is not, it's one of those cheapy Amazon things, but it does seem to work. I don't know how easily controllable it is, but it's definitely working. So I'm going to let this thing go for at least today. Alright, so this is a pan I just pulled out of the electrolysis tank, and you can see it's still got quite a bit of crud on it. And sometimes seasoning these pans requires quite a bit of work. It's not always easy. E-tank may make it seem easy sometimes, but I find some of these pans, if they were really well seasoned beforehand, it's very hard to get that seasoning off, you can see. So I will take a wire brush, but I'm going to try to do gently, where I'm just kind of trying to scrape it off and not cause marks on the pan. This is going to take quite a bit of time. This thing has been soaking for almost 3 days, and most of it has been stripped. It looks really good. There's just a few little parts, mainly here on the inside. And this may be because the anodes in the E-tank aren't able to get to this. I don't know. I'm going to need to do more research to see if I can make my tank a little more effective, but it could also just be the seasoning. But you can see there's a lot of work there. There's a lot of scrubbing to get this stuff off. So I'm just going to be scrubbing away, trying to get this thing better. Here we go. This is a pan that I finished stripping, and I'm ready to do a little bit of work on it. I haven't seasoned it yet, but I'm going to do a lead test on the pan. I'm going to demo how that's done. What we have here is a 3-notch Lodge number 5 pan. You can see it doesn't say Lodge on it, but you can tell it's a Lodge because of the characteristics. It has a heat ring with 3 notches, one at 12, 9, and 3. Or older pans would have just a single notch, and then really even older pans would have the full heat ring with raised lettering instead of indent lettering. And of course this distinctive handle style. So this is a 3-notch Lodge. I don't know where I got it, but I will show you for comparison. This is the same pan that I picked up today off of Craigslist. This is a 3-notch number 5 Lodge. I don't know any other marks on it, and I won't until I get a chance to remove the rust. So this was going to go in the E-tank. This was sitting outside, and somebody wanted to get rid of it, and so I bought it in a lot of 3 pans. I've got another video about that, or maybe it's in this one, I don't know. Anyway, it's nice when you've got some of the same pans and some of the same size pans, because it's interesting to compare the changes and the different ways in which they're made, both in the same manufacturer and across different manufacturers. So in this case, this has been nicely stripped. There's a few little tidbits of seasoning left on it. So let's look at we can clearly see the pan now, and we can see certain characteristics of it. So you see the big 5, that's the size number corresponding to the size of the pan, not 5 inches, but it fits a size 5 stove opening. That's how they were sized. I forget what the actual size in inches is of a size 5 pan, but it's more than 5 inches. You see the characteristic 2 spouts. This particular handle is pretty much obvious it's a Lodge. All the Lodges, almost all of them, have very similar handles. We have a number 2 down here underneath the handle. I assume that indicates that this was made on the 2nd shift at Lodge. Sometimes you'll find 1, 2, or 3s even. And I think that indicates the shift that the pan was made. And you'll also see, although I could be wrong, it could be a mold number, because there's also a dot right here, and this clearly looks like a mark, if you can see that. I don't think that's a pit or a mistake. I think that's a mark, a little dot. So that could indicate first shift. I've seen where these pans had 1, 2, and 3 dots, and that indicated the shift. Usually on most of these pans, there'll be 3 markings in addition to any manufacturer or source or country. There'll be the size, there'll be the mold number, and there'll be an indication of the shift, especially with the Lodge pans. So we have 1 dot and a number 2 here on the handle. So it's also pretty shiny. Sometimes when you see a pan that's super silvery, it could be a sign that somebody tried to melt lead in it. And this is something that if you're going to use something for cooking, you really do want to know, because if anybody used lead in the pan, it's pretty much contaminated. You should never ever use it for food use. You could hang it on a wall, you could use it to melt more lead, but I would never recommend cooking any food that people or animals would eat in it, because once the lead is in there, it's really hard to get it out and you're going to contaminate your food. So I got these lead testing strips, and I don't know much about the differences between the different lead tests. I just got this off Amazon, and what you do with this is you dip this little Q-tip looking thing in some vinegar. It'll turn yellow. It'll turn the color of yellow here, and then you rub it in the pan for 30 seconds and then wait, and if it turns red, that means lead has been detected. So let's give it a try, shall we? So I'm going to dip this thing, and wow, you can see it immediately turns yellow, right? So now it's been activated. So now let's rub it in the pan for 30 seconds. And I want to wash this vinegar out because the vinegar is corrosive, not good for the pan. Rub all around. It's obviously getting silver all over it. It's not changing color. It's still yellow with a little bit of silver on it. So I would say, according to this, it's still yellow. No sign of lead. I wonder if I have some lead around here that I can test this with. Okay, I found a lead weight from scuba diving. So this thing still hasn't turned any color of yellow other than the brown around it. So let's rub it, some of it against this and see what happens. Does it look like it's turning a little red to you? Maybe it is a little. Yeah, I think it's. I can see it turning reddish now after I rubbed it on this piece of this lead weight. I wasn't actually rubbing it directly on the lead. It's inside of that little bag, but it does look like it did change the color. So I guess these things do work. Of course, in a general sense, you know, if something does test positive, you want to double check it. If you know, or if it's going to be your daily cooker, you might want to double check it. I think this silver is just because it's cleaned up really nice. So what I did with this one is I pulled it out of the E-tank and it still had a bunch of crap around it. I scrubbed on it as much as I could, and oh, you know what? You know what the silver might be? I used this to help clean it. This is a stainless steel scrubby pad. I wonder if this got some of the silver on it. I wonder if that's what did it. Because it is a little more silvery than what I'm used to. And again, quite a lot of work that goes into these. Now, you know, you might ask, what's the value of this? You can find these unseasoned and in bad shape for nothing or a couple of bucks. But what if you got it all seasoned and restored? What are they selling for? Well, these more common pans, they're not selling for a whole lot. I would argue whether or not it's a profitable venture buying these and then trying to refinish them and season them. Now, obviously, some of the rarer models and highly collectible ones, it's absolutely worthwhile. This is a number 5 Lodge, super common, and I don't know what the going price is. I would be surprised if you could get more than $20 for it completely done. Maybe 30. I don't know. I feel like if I could fix this up and sell it for 30, that would be kind of worth my time, kind of, because I spent this thing soaked in an E-tank for more than 2 days, and then I used some Easy Off, some lye in it. That wasn't cheap to do that. Then I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed multiple times. And then when I season it, I'm going to be doing multiple seasonings on this. And then I'm using electricity for the oven to heat everything up. I mean, this is a labor of love more than it is. It's certainly not a profitable business venture, I don't think. But it is a beautiful piece of history, you know, and this is something that is usable too. So there you have it. Okay, so we're doing an update. This is a story about a pan that I picked up off of eBay, and I guess you could say maybe it's a cautionary tale, but I've been wanting to get some of these more obscure pans. I'm unlikely to run into them in the wild, and I wanted to at least have some examples. And lately I've been finding a lot of number 3s, so if I come across a number 3 from a manufacturer that I don't have, I'd like to get it, because that way I can compare number 3s. And here we have a number 3. This is a number 3 that I found in the wild here, which is a BSR, and it's a Red Mountain. And here's one I got off eBay. This is a favorite, which is a significantly older piece, or potentially significantly older piece, and it's really a beautiful pan. And it was sold by somebody on eBay who was more or less just a general seller, not necessarily a cast iron person. At least that's what the impression was. So they didn't provide the standard descriptions you might expect from a cast iron person, you know, whether there's any cracks or anything like that. So you're kind of taking your chances. So I think I got this for maybe around $30, including shipping. For a beautiful, good condition pan like this, I think that's, you know, it was restored. This is fresh out of the E-tank here, so you can see that it's been all stripped and it's down to the metal. It's going to start flash rusting any moment, which is why as soon as I finish this video, I'm going to coat it with oil and throw it in the oven and begin seasoning it. But I want to talk about this because let me show you. If you get cast iron to cook with and use and appreciate, it doesn't really matter. There are obviously some flaws that are really bad. If there's a crack in a piece of cast iron, that can be a problem, and oftentimes you can... That actually kind of doesn't sound good, does it? Usually you want a little bit more of a ring, like that. So maybe I'll examine this closely to see if there's any cracks. I don't see any. But then again, every manufacturer might be a little bit different. This looks really good. I don't notice any cracks in it. That is a weird ring though. That's the kind of ring you might normally get when something is cracked. I don't see any signs it's been repaired. This could just be a quality of this particular pan and whatever, I don't know. But when you get stuff like this off of eBay, especially if it's not been restored and it's not from a reputable seller, you really don't know what you're getting. Now, where did it go wrong for me with this? Well, again, it depends upon how picky you are about cast iron, right? Collectors want stuff that's in great condition. They don't want any pitting. They want logos that are very visible, and this has definitely got that. Really beautiful logo, nice and pronounced, and the size and everything. There's no noticeable flaws in the casting. It's really nice. It's super smooth on the inside. There doesn't appear to be any sign that anybody ground it away later on after it came from the factory. This looks to be original minus the seasoning that's been removed. But one of the other qualities is you want a pan that'll sit flat and won't wobble. That's a higher quality pan. So I'll show you the standard test. We'll bring this over here, right? And we'll use this BSR pan. And there's a spin test. You tap it, and you can see it sits flat. It doesn't wobble. It's, you know, it doesn't. It's a nice flat pan. That's something that's very important. Flat, flat. So let's take the favorite. Put this down. So you see that fails the spin test right there. What this tells us is that the center of the pan is bulbous a little bit. And so it's got a little bit of a wobble to it. Is it a big deal? It's probably not. Although if you have a glass or, you know, electric or an induction cook stove, this thing is going to be kind of like that. It's not sitting flat. Maybe on like a gas stove like this, it doesn't really matter. It's not gonna spin. So not really a problem in most cases, but for collectors, they don't like that. That's bad. So I didn't get the best deal in that respect. This is a pan that if I ever wanted to resell it in the community, I'd have to note. And I guess what they do when they note whether it sits flat is, how many business cards you'd have to stick underneath it to level it, whether it's 1, 2, or whatever. I really don't know. I'm not in the business of selling them, but it's a really beautiful pan. But that is one of the faults with it. So, what would it normally be worth in the collector community? Probably not a lot. But then the collectors are super duper picky about everything, and of course they still contend they should be able to buy a really good condition pan for super cheap. And I think prices are starting to go up pretty high. But I don't know. It's an interesting market, the whole collectible cast iron thing. I like and appreciate those that are doing it. I'm obviously kind of bitten by the bug myself, but I just like collecting them and restoring them, and I've been gifting a lot of them to friends and family, and so that's what I will continue to do. And I'll also try to get a little bit of a collection so I can showcase. When you're looking through these pans through history, it's really interesting to just notice the difference in ways they were made. These Birmingham stove and range pans are much heavier and beefier, which is also probably one of the reasons why they're less likely to be warped. The Favorite and the Griswold pans are thinner. They're lighter, they're easier to handle, they just feel better. The downside is, of course, they're not as heavy and they're not as beefy, so they don't hold and retain heat as well, and they can be more susceptible to extreme heat or extreme cool, which can probably cause these things to warp. But any pan that's misused can be damaged. But boy, the difference in the weight between these two is significant. So there you have it. The newest acquisition, which I will be working on seasoning pronto, is this really pretty Favorite. Oh, let's talk about Favorite. So we didn't talk about that. So this company is from the Favorite Stove and Range Company, and they were located in Miami County in Ohio, southwest of Ohio. They operated from about 1889 to 1935. Obviously, they made stoves. A lot of these cookware sources were mainly stove companies, and that was their main bread and butter. So a lot of them didn't even label their cookware because it was just an accessory that was added to the stove. But Favorite did, and they had a number of different kinds of logos during this time period. This is what's known as the smiley face logo. You see with the little thing underneath it. It's nice little stylized. It's very cute. They also had what was the block logo, as you can see there, and then an older. So based on my research, it seems like all the pans were made from 1916 to 1934. And there may be examples of each of these types of logos in that date period. Now I'd like to think maybe they changed them over time, but maybe some pieces used different logos, I don't know. So when you see this is basically made sometime between 1916 and 1934. There you have it. Favorite Cookware number 3. So here we are, wrapping up what you've seen in today's episode. This is a lot of the finished seasoned pans that were featured earlier on. So let's go over them. First off, the pan that was shown in the very beginning, which was completely crudded up, this is what it revealed. I thought I had more footage, and maybe I do, I couldn't find it, where I take this and I cover it with Easy Off, and I put it in a black plastic bag and let it sit for a long time, and I used an entire can of Easy Off to get this thing out. And this is what was underneath it. This is a Wagner Ware Sydney O number 5, and we're going to talk about Wagner a lot more in future episodes. I'm kind of progressively going through the different manufacturers, but I wanted to show you this one. As I get more, we're going to be able to show you the different variations in the pans, but this came out really beautiful. Look at that. It's got the Wagner Ware Sydney O logo, and it just came out really good. This was a lot of work trying to get all of this crap off. And in a future episode, I'm going to show you an easier way to do it than to spray oven cleaner on it. So stay tuned for that. So let's look at the next thing we had was the 3-notch Lodge number 5. This cleaned up beautifully. This is a nicely seasoned. This has got about three coats of seasoning on it, and it just came out really nice and smooth. And you can see, and I've got the other 3-notch Lodge had a lot of pitting in it, and I've got something planned for that in a future episode too. I'm already working on that one. You got to stay tuned. But I'll show you another 3-notch Lodge that, and this is the number 7 BSR. We'll get to that in a second. So here's another 3-notch Lodge. These are both from relatively the same era, and it shows you how there's such variations in these pans, right? This is a standard 3-notch Lodge, and a relatively early one, so it doesn't say SK. Here's a 2 and a 1 here, which I think is maybe the shift mark, although, as I said before, this one has a 2 on the handle. So, not sure what those are. But these are both basically from the same era, but you'll notice the handles are different. This has almost like a small moon-shaped thing here. This one is more of a triangular, and you can see that the shape of the handles are definitely different. And this has definitely got more of a deeper ridge down there. So there was a lot of variation between the molds, even at the same time in production. And I have found by weighing these, and I'll show in a future episode where I actually take, now that I've got a number of pans that are of the same make and era, I'll actually weigh them and see how much difference there is, because I think there's a tremendous amount of variation. You can see this is definitely thicker than this one. So the molds, there's some differences in some of these molds. So that's our number 5. Came out really beautifully. Again, what could I sell this for? I really don't know. I think if you could get $20, that'd be a good deal, but could you get 30? I don't know. So let's take a look at our BSR number 7 now that it's completely cleaned up and everything. This came out beautifully too. Really nice and smooth in there. And you've got the 7B. There's been some debate as to whether that's hand scribed or not. It's not super clear, but I believe this is a Red Mountain. It could be a transition piece because it does have a little bit more of a lid on it. I can't tell sometimes if this is the smaller or the large pour spouts. It looks like it could be a smaller pour spout, but I think sometimes there's, well, here's a Century series to compare it to, right? So let's compare these two. So this pour spout definitely looks a little bit bigger, but this is the Century. So hard to tell. These both could be transition pieces. Anyway, we will investigate that more in the future. As I get more pans to compare things to, we will be able to see. Last but not least is that big Asian pan. And I basically just cleaned this one up. I didn't re-season it and strip it. I just put another coat of, I cleaned it and put another coat of seasoning so that you can see there's some layers of seasoning there, which is, that's typically what a good, used pan will have. It's not going to be perfect, but I did re-season the whole thing, and it's ready to go again. Now, the reason why I didn't completely strip this down is because of the law of diminishing returns. This is not really a collectible pan, but it is certainly a usable pan. It's nice sized. It's actually taller than your typical, maybe number 10 or number 12 pan. It might be comparable to a number 11. It's 31.7 centimeters, says 12 and a half inches. So it's probably about a number 11, maybe. Really nice pan. What I'll probably do is either give it to somebody or sell it relatively cheap, like $20 or something like that. I got these pans in a deal, so they were really, really cheap. But as you can see earlier on in the episode, I go over some stuff that didn't turn out all that good. I got pans that were wobbling, that weren't flat. It's really a hit and miss. So I would say, in general, this episode, I didn't really do too well. Now, wait till you see the next episode. Wait till you see the mess that I have to wade through and the problems that I run into, because it's going to be pretty significant. Hopefully I won't get bitten by a moccasin or something. And stay tuned for the next episode. And as always, thanks everybody for watching. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell and click like if you want to see more of these. That's the way to do it.